The United States Declaration of Independence, adopted on July 4, 1776, stands as one of the most powerful political documents ever written. It is not merely a historical artifact sealed behind museum glass. It is a declaration of philosophy, a statement of rebellion, and a blueprint for the moral expectations of government. To understand its meaning today, we must travel back to the turbulent world of the 13 American colonies in the 18th century, a world simmering with frustration, political awakening, and revolutionary courage. A world on the edge of revolution. In the decades leading up to 1776, tensions between the American colonies and King George III's British government had grown unbearable. The colonies were not originally demanding independence. Many colonists still considered themselves loyal British subjects. What they demanded first was representation and fairness. Instead, Parliament imposed a series of taxes and laws that colonists believed violated their rights. The Stamp Act, 1765, taxing printed materials. The Townshend Acts, 1767, taxing imports. The Tea Act, 1773, granting monopoly power to the British East India Company. These policies triggered dramatic resistance, including the famous Boston Tea Party when colonists dumped British tea into Boston Harbor. What was happening was not simply anger over taxes. It was something deeper, a philosophical rebellion about power and rights. Colonists began asking a dangerous question. If government violates the rights of the people, does the people have the right to overthrow it? The pen that launched a revolution. In June 1776, the Second Continental Congress appointed a committee to draft a declaration explaining why the colonies must separate from Britain. The primary author was Thomas Jefferson, assisted by John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston. Jefferson, only 33 years old, wrote most of the document in a small rented room in Philadelphia. Drawing inspiration from Enlightenment philosophers like John Locke, he framed government not as divine authority, but as a contract with the people. At the center of the Declaration is perhaps the most famous sentence in American history. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. These words were revolutionary. In a world dominated by kings, aristocracies, and inherited power, Jefferson was asserting something radical. Political legitimacy comes from the people, not from monarchs. The three core principles. The Declaration presents three core ideas that still define American political philosophy today. 1. Natural rights. The document declares that people possess unalienable rights, including life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. These rights are not granted by government. They exist before government. This idea reshaped political thought worldwide. 2. Government exists by consent. The Declaration states that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, government authority comes only because the people allow it. This principle laid the foundation for modern democracy. 3. The right of revolution. The document goes even further. It argues that when a government becomes destructive to these rights, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. This was a direct justification for revolution against Britain. And it was a dangerous claim because it meant any government could be challenged if it violated the rights of the people. The list of charges against the king. Nearly half the Declaration is a list of grievances against King George III. Jefferson accuses the king of dissolving colonial legislatures, obstructing justice, maintaining standing armies without consent, cutting off trade, imposing taxes without representation. The document essentially functions like an indictment in a courtroom, presenting evidence that the king had become a tyrant. By listing these abuses, the colonists were telling the world, this revolution is not reckless rebellion, it is a moral necessity. The moment everything changed. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress formally adopted the Declaration, but independence was not yet secured. The colonists still had to win the American Revolutionary War against the most powerful empire on earth. Signing the document was extremely dangerous. Every signer risked execution for treason, yet they signed anyway because they believed the cause of liberty was worth the risk. The contradictions. The Declaration's most powerful line, "All men are created equal," exposed a profound contradiction. Many of the men who signed the document, including Thomas Jefferson, were slaveholders. Millions of people in America were not free. Enslaved Africans, women without political rights, indigenous nations displaced from their lands. From the very beginning, the Declaration was both a promise and a challenge, a promise of equality, and a challenge for future generations to make that promise real. How the Declaration shaped the future. Over time, the Declaration became a moral reference point for movements seeking justice. It influenced the abolitionist movement, the women's suffrage movement, the civil rights movement. In fact, Martin Luther King Jr. referenced the Declaration directly in his "I Have a Dream" speech, calling it a promissory note America had yet to fully honor. What it means today. Today, the Declaration of Independence still serves as a compass for American democracy. It reminds citizens that government must remain accountable, freedom requires vigilance, rights belong to the people, not rulers. Even in modern debates about civil liberties, government power, free speech, voting rights, people still return to the Declaration's central question: are we living up to the promise that all people are created equal? A document that still breathes the Declaration of Independence is not just a relic of 1776. It is a living moral argument. It challenges every generation to ask, are we protecting liberty? Are we preserving equality? Are we honoring the rights of the people? The founders did not create a perfect nation, but they wrote a document that continues to demand that America strive toward one. And nearly 250 years later, the words of the Declaration still echo across history, reminding the world that the idea of freedom, once declared, can never easily be extinguished.